I'm going to call the city council work session to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Councillor Weber. Here. Councillor Mo.
Here.
Councillor Rodley. Here. Councillor Blackwell. Councillor Doyle. Here. And Councillor Pictionary.
Here, thank you.
And Councillor Blackwell is excused for the evening. We have two items in the work session. The first one is code enforcement nuisance and administrative civil penalties code update and program modernization with Charlie Kent.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. Before I begin the presentation, I'd like to briefly update based off of the timeline that was brought forward in May of 2023. Phase one was the initial phase of really building into the program, defining what the objectives were, educating the department. You know, there were a lot of steps to that, and we fell a few months behind there, but we're back on track now after reprioritizing the code update before the software. So it seems that I took too many things on initially, need to reprioritize. We're back on track now. A few updates as well regarding the program since we last met in September of last year. Most recently, we quickly pivoted to assist with the recent ice storm emergency. Officer Brenda did step into a logistics role with the EOC there and played a crucial role working through a cleanup plan. We do look forward to developing this relationship further with emergency management and providing that type of quick pivot that we can help out as a community service. We continue to administer the sanitation grant, which we started in September of last year. And this was a grant money that was awarded by the state. Code enforcement has taken the public facing portion of this and really helped clean up quite a few properties. 42 letters were sent out over the past 5 months with 29 responses, and we've removed almost 47 cubic yards of garbage from the community free of charge. This has really allowed us to stay ahead of some code enforcement cases and resolve ones that were currently in the quay. We've reduced the backlog of cases from 180 in May down to 60 currently, and we've had several high priority responses to emergencies that essentially when there's a news story about it, code enforcement's involved, it's an emergency for us. So it's not a police response, but it's something that certainly needs to be addressed directly. So we had a number of those, most recently a demolition of 2 zombie houses through the abatement program, through a receivership and voluntary abatement program. One of those houses had been abandoned and around since I began working here in 2016. So that's a pretty big win. And it also sounds like the community development division may be making an offer later this month to what I consider a promising prospect for the newly created code compliance associate manager position. Moving on into the PowerPoint. What we're here to talk about today is the administrative civil penalty program and what's required to get to that to be operational. There will be a municipal code revision required with the addition of this new administrative versus the judicial enforcement program. That is included in attachment 3, and the city attorney's office have made those revisions and included notes in that commentary. Essentially, it defines an alternative enforcement mechanism and ties that into our current judicial process, not really changing the process itself, just modifying it so that the administrative civil penalties will be a per se violation for minor type violations under $100. So essentially, if you're parking on the front lawn, that's a quick $25 ticket that we can resolve pretty quickly instead of going through the judicial process. There was some language to clean up in this as well. And while we were addressing the municipal code update for the administrative civil penalties, I took liberties to identify some provisions within the nuisance code that required update to a more modern principle. These are identified, and I can dig into these a little bit later. That's really the meat and bones of this council session. But essentially, there's a differentiation between public nuisances, attractive nuisances, and then the addition of a dangerous or abandoned structure and allowing the city to effectively deal with that as a violation. Additionally, the moving forward with the civil administrative penalties, once those the municipal code is updated, we'd move forward with building the more details into the enforcement process itself. And so this would be that response time that we spoke about before, addressing those appropriately and identifying a matrix so that this could be administered to effectively and also fairly. And finally, there is a software component to this, which will be a requirement to go forward with administrative civil penalties as well. Our current software doesn't support the application, and it would require half as much as what the original the software ask would be in order to process this in-house, much like you would a building permit or something like that. So just to recap the difference between the administrative civil penalties process and the judicial process, which is current. ACPs are more effective for minor violations. It allows officers to come out on site, attempt to make contact or resolve those violations in person with a very short time to compliance if that's required. If it's somebody who's parked on their front lawn and we can knock on the door and tell them to knock it off, that's what we're looking for. If we need to issue a ticket with a quick response time, we can do that as well. This really comes into play with ADA access issues on sidewalks, which are relatively minor violations, but could become major issues. This can also progress to the judicial process. It does serve as prior written notice, the actual administrative civil penalties ticket. So think of a parking ticket. Included in that language would be, or excuse me, included in the ticket would be language that would provide prior notice of this is a violation of the municipal code and satisfy the citation process that we'd have to follow through if we were to take this to court for the much larger penalties. The judicial process is more effective for those chronic issues that we really need the court's input or the legal process and framework to support the abatement of. So essentially with a larger type violation, there are larger fines. And also it puts it in front of the judge so that they understand that we probably will be coming to abate this quickly after, or if we're unable to resolve it through that process. This also insulates staff from that per se issue. So we're talking about a large amount of money per day, per violation. We issue or can issue up to $4,000 for specific violations. The city would appreciate the insulation of a judge, ordering that forfeiture versus the city just doing it without the proper backing, if you will. And this also helps us to arrange for abatement warrants or administrative warrants if they're required. The municipal code revision affects two portions of Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is public protection, and I wish it was a little bit more clear with regard to the section numbers. Within the code right now, it's a bunch of names. So you see nuisance in general, particular nuisance, where Section 5.002 is effectively what the public nuisance, or excuse me, the nuisances prohibited portion of the chapter. That's the essence of what we do. There are 12 specific sections regarding public nuisances, not necessarily broken down or very clear. So what I've done is clarified some of those more common nuisance violations to include more of a generalized issue. So instead of, for instance, we have used materials, which include the word debris, and garbage and dead organic matter and debris, which includes debris as well. We've shortened those and condensed those into a one section with quite a number of less words. We've also identified the difference between the public health nuisance violations, which directly affect the public, and attractive nuisances, which are geared towards protecting children from issues that may come up on private property. Additionally, and before I get into the abandoned, derelict, or dangerous structure, we also removed one portion of the standard public nuisance, which is very common throughout code enforcement of stored vehicles. We've simplified that explanation and clarified that and included it in section 5.004. Clarifying that public view, for instance, so we took out a few different portions of the code, which frankly didn't reflect current values of the public impact. So for instance, in public view was identified as clearly visible from the curtilage or from a neighbor's second story window. And while that may be an issue, the city, we believe that public impact versus private impact is different. And it would cause much less of an issue from the neighbor to neighbor relationship. Dangerous, abandoned, or derelict structures are that's a really big deal in code enforcement. A few years ago, there was the unfortunate issue where some folks perished in a abandoned, derelict structure. And we need to do better than that. What this portion of the statute does is provide the city with the authority to identify those structures and very clear language that how to resolve them. This is done through the abatement program effectively, in that the city manager will need to go through, or designee will need to go through the courts in order to secure a warrant to abate those nuisance violations. We want to put that burden back onto the property owner and really make them responsible for maintaining structures that they are responsible for. In addition to providing the new outline for the dangerous buildings, city code enforcement staff will be attending specific training to assist with this. So this is through the International Code Council, which are the folks who also certify building inspectors. We will be taking a zoning enforcement certification, as well as a housing and property maintenance certification. That doesn't tell us, how many 2x4s will be needed inside of a structure, but it will provide us with some professional certification and credibility to make those determinations. And obviously, we'd utilize the support of the fire marshal's office and the building official to make those identifications as well. So before I get into the software solution that code enforcement is proposing, I'd like to open the floor and see if there's any questions that we can address about any of the code revisions that I've suggested. Joe.
Hello, good evening. While I cough. There's several things that you brought up that I have questions about in regards to, just off the cuff, just a few seconds ago, you're talking about you needing some zoning instruction or zoning training. How does zoning affect code enforcement?
Zoning is, so prohibited parking is a zoning issue, in that, excuse me, a portion of the update would be, commercial vehicles, requiring a commercial driver's license. So think of an 18-wheeler or, some sort of commercial vehicle stored on private property. That is an application of an industrial use on residential zone. And frankly, we need more training in, how to identify that. We have on-the-job training that we go through, the planning department, and we also lend on their experience, when enforcing the development code. But this would provide officers with that frontline, certification and understanding.
So activities, potentially commercial activities on non-commercial zone lands is what you're talking about?
That's part of what I'm talking about. Yes, Council.
And thank you. And so you are referring to, and I clearly recalled a fire in that building, et cetera, with where people had passed or died. And so you're talking about requiring the property owners to, well, we move into an abatement process, but I'm curious where it's like a property owner and the city is going to tell them that their building is not safe, which is fine. But then the building owner boards it up, says, puts no trespassing on it and boards it up. So is that building still something that's going to be considered a nuisance with that property owner? So are we going to still go after that property owner after they have made safe that building?
No,
Okay.
we won't be going after the property owner. That's the goal of, the statute, is to, compel them to board up the building when they're, neglecting their responsibility.
So if it's open and accessible is what you're talking about.
Open and accessible or substandard, along with, a series of other, issues. So more than just open and accessible.
Because I'm just thinking of other buildings in the city that are way past their lifespan that are sitting and just sitting there as themselves is a hazard, such as the old what's that shopping building, not Winco, but what was it? Waremark, such as that building. It's been sitting there for multiple decades, and one could consider that as potentially a public nuisance or hazardous, correct?
Potentially, if a complaint was received about it, or if there were, the complaint or evidence of a violation occurring.
So I'm just, there's so many different scenarios, and I'm just very concerned about how proactive code enforcement is going to be, and if they're going to still be responding to complaints as opposed to initiating their own complaint or initiating their own actions.
I understand your concern, Councilor Pictionary, but I'd look to, our current status of still being behind in 60 code complaints or cases that we're behind on in a complaint only system that we're currently using.
So the shift in policies, what you have or what you have going, I haven't read, well, I've read most all of them, but there's a lot in the past. So is there thought in shifting into self-initiated cases as opposed to our standing policy of only responding to complaints?
Self-initiated in what direction, Councilor Pictionary? So we're not going to be out driving around the neighborhoods looking for violations. If there's a strategic approach that eventually the council would like to adopt, I would consider that an acceptable level of proactivity. However, we will remain complaint-based unless there is a life safety issue that we observe while doing our
Right, and
routine.
I'm totally okay with life safety issues for sure. But I'm just concerned about if it's addressed in policy, if it's going to be complaint-based enforcement, or if it's going to be allowing, other than public safety, other than life safety, allow for code enforcement to do their own self-initiated cases.
I'm not sure I understand the question there, Councilor Pictionary.
So in the past, I've been here for a long time,
Mhm.
and I've been in different cities many times, many different cities and whatnot, and I've seen, and it may not be you, and it may be two code enforcement officers from you, that you get a person in this position that decides they have a real issue with a particular thing. You know, they have an issue with overhang closer than a 5 foot safe barrier from, you know, going closer to 5 feet to the property line, et cetera. And they go around and start hammering folks for that. And is there, with nothing in the books that says that's not what the city wants to do. So is this policy clear enough to where it's not going to be allowing that type of activity through code enforcement? Would it allow that shift? And will the city say, hey, you're not supposed to do that? And the code enforcement officer says, show me. To see what I'm saying?
I see what you're saying. I understand your concern. In previous experience, I've observed that same issue. I don't know where the proposed code revision would allow that type of engagement.
So let's go to Nancy. She's waving me down over on this side.
I was actually waving you down to pass the ball over to, lateral it over to Mary Bridget Smith.
Yeah, I think Counselor Pictionary, you bring up a good point about sort of the difference between language that's in a code that would be a tool that the city could use, for example, whether it's abatement or a administrative civil penalty, which is a fine, or the court process. And then also the discretion that staff have in terms of what they enforce. So that information probably wouldn't be in your code, that type of policy. But it sounds like what we're talking about is remaining mainly a complaint-based program. So when someone calls with a complaint, then determine, does that violate the code? But there could be situations that are, you know, buildings that are unsafe to people, and like life and safety, like Mr. Kent mentioned, could be self-initiated, but those would be the rare case, and I think would not be the type of matter that, like, for example, a neighborhood matter about, you know, overhanging, like you're talking about with carports or other things that are important to quality of life, but not necessarily life and safety. But you're not going to see that policy being complaint driven incorporated into the code, because the code's like our law and how we apply it. But I do think that brings up a really good point about, you know, how are we going to apply it? And I think it's going to maintain to be a complaint-based system, and just something that would go through the checks with the other people in that department in terms of how they're enforced. If that helps.
Yeah, I think so. I guess it most basically we'll have to rely heavily upon training.
Yeah, I think training, and then what, you know, obviously what the council hears from the public too is always really key in code enforcement. I think that's one of the main areas where council has interaction with the neighborhood and with people, right?
Yeah.
And so I think it's just about any enforcement that we do, whether it's development code or code enforcement or whatever, just making sure that we're consistent in how we apply it.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
All right, other questions? Steve?
Use the term an 18-wheeler stored. Does that mean the same as parked? If I got home from 10 hours driving, I parked my truck out there. It's not stored, or maybe you would consider it that.
I would consider it stored if it's overnight. Storing a vehicle if you're stopping for lunch, or if you forgot your wallet. Certainly, the complaint that we would receive, we wouldn't be out there in 30 minutes to check and see if it's there.
Good enough. Thank you.
All right. Other questions?
I am going to circle back.
Okay.
So I think back to your question, Counselor Pictionary, about overreach of staff. I guess that would be a way I would say that you could have on an occasion an employee that would take it upon themselves and that would be something that we would need to manage administratively. So that's something that I think is worth exploration with our department director, and we can put a policy or a procedure in place that describes the process, that delineates that it's complaint driven, and they may have that already and I don't know. But if not, that would be a pretty simple fix. And that also would help if there was any confusion, if an employee, say, I'm just being speculative, if they did overreach and said, well, no, it doesn't say anywhere that I can't do this, right? So, you know, if it became a disciplinary issue or something, then that would cover the city as well. So that's something we can definitely look into on the administrative side.
Yes, thank you. That does. And it just, from folks looking from the outside in and seeing this is a pretty significant shift for the city code enforcement, and it's in the right direction. I appreciate all your work. And I'm not in favor of it. It's just that I think we need to make sure that we control the perception or the perceptions of what people may have, and that the city is not going into putting the hammer down starting next week type situation, and just need to let folks know that this is a modernization of an antiquated system and trying to become more efficient as a city.
Understood,
That's
Councilor
fair?
Pittner.
Yeah.
So I had one piece of feedback on when you're talking about a sort of total cases, right? You always refer to, hey, we're 60 cases behind, and I don't know, in September you said maybe 120 if my memory serves. What's the caseload you're actually trying to manage to, right? Is 60 behind, or is it kind of the right amount of open cases that you want to have at any given time?
Mayor, so when I say 60 cases, those are very clearly behind by at least 3 months or more.
Okay.
Investigations, complaints, contact with folks, or follow up to inspections that we've done, including more recently the ice storm set us back just a little bit
Oh, yeah.
for some of those lower priority. Our case management, we can handle about 10 cases a day, meaning
Okay.
we touch 10 cases a day. That's either inspection or closure, or we have a 5-minute conversation with someone. That's about average of across the industry. If we start carrying more than 50 cases in a caseload, so for instance, I have 27 that are currently in citation, and then I've got probably another 60 that are in investigation, and I'm slowly weeding those towards either closure or the citation process. It's a little bit skewed, and it's pretty heavy for a team of 2 to accommodate.
So what would caught up be? Would it be under 50?
Yes. So ideally, Officer Brenda and myself would handle 50 cases each on a rotating basis. It'd never be 50. It'd be between 40 and 60.
Yeah.
But that's about the ideal.
Okay. All right. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay. I think we're back to you then.
Certainly. The municipal code revision is the first piece and the foundational piece. Without it, we shouldn't move forward with our current staffing and resources that we have. Ideally, we would transition into a different software solution, which we interestingly enough didn't know the court was utilizing, but has been using for the past 12 years quite successfully. It's not the cheapest solution. There were 4 demos that I went through over the course of about 3.5, 4 months. And we actually had the Tyler folks come on site, walk us through the code enforcement module, which does support a public interface and a 311 type complaint system. Code enforcement is a small piece of that, and with the software we would receive, the data management and the workflow process, the analytic capabilities, in addition to I want to say it's an ACH or an AC. Something process where staff at the counter would actually process the fines instead of going through the court. And then tying that all back into finance as well. So the Tyler software solution is far above the current software that we're using. It's not the cheapest out there, but it's by far not the most expensive. It's a very intuitive process, and they checked every box even before I started asking the questions. So we're talking about automation within the program itself. So instead of making 4 or 5 telephone calls back to folks whom I haven't responded to about complaints, we can send an automatic email or an update or some sort of canned response based on the result of an inspection. So with one button, I'm sending an email, I'm updating our workflow process, saving different documents and really creating a robust workflow process. And this is really ideal. Code enforcement's always going to be lean. We're not the police agency, or excuse me, we're not the police department or the fire agency. And so we need to think ahead and really set ourselves up for success with the resources that we have available. So in addition to this software solution, there will be an administrative enforcement process that we'll need to create as well. So that is, what does it look like on the street with the customer, the community member interaction? What does the back office look like? And then how does everything tie together? We've got to incorporate a hearings official through LCOG, and there's a lot of moving pieces that go into that as well. To support that, we would need some additional administrative help as well. When you consider that there is a cost associated with this transition to the administrative civil penalties process, you need to understand that the fine amount is much more recoverable than it would be otherwise. So currently, if I issue a citation for $500 through the court, it may get reduced to $250, but that's still quite a large amount for a person to pay out of pocket. For instance, conversely, if you were able to have a ticket that costs $25 that you're able to pay online or through a customer portal at the front desk, I would like to think that that is much more that's a much lower barrier to get past. And we would see a larger increase in the amount of funds that we recover from the fines that we issue. Currently, we recover about 10% of the fines that we issue. We actually see that money back to the general fund. We do go through the court system that has a collections portion, and it's a tough process to get back to $500 based off of $25 a month. So additionally, the software solution could potentially be used to collect data as well. HUD has some pretty amazing maps and data collection centers that we'd like to integrate or cross interface somehow through the GIS folks with some of that data that we would collect through Tyler. So for instance, what is the predominant violation occurring along the Main Street corridor? And is that potentially something that council would like some proactive enforcement along? So this would open up some of those tools, not just based off of code enforcement's direction, and we could tie that into policy certainly. But those are some of the curbs that we could also discuss about when we're building out the code enforcement process, or excuse me, the administrative civil penalties process.
All right. Steve.
How does it work on code enforcement between city limits and the urban growth boundary? And you know the area I'm talking about. How do we, I know you prevail over that, and then how do you enforce anything?
Currently, any violations that occur within the urban growth boundaries would require an injunction to stop that nuisance violation. So if you were to develop a parcel outside of the development code, we would be required to go through the city attorney's office to ask for an injunction to stop that activity.
You said parcel. What do you mean by that?
Tax lot. Councilman.
Okay, so it's action on a tax lot. Okay, because we have a lot of it in my old neighborhood. It's pretty confusing over there. Glenwood.
I understand. I'm talking more in terms of we do regulate the Springfield Development Code regardless of the violation. So whatever the violation would be, it would need to be resolved through that fashion.
We're going to go to Joe first, and then we'll come back to Corey.
I think just some clarification of what Councilor Moe was asking. I think he's referring to the no man's land between the city limits and the urban growth boundary. that strip of land around the city, is that within the jurisdiction or the activities of our code enforcement? And I don't think it is it?
It is only in regard to the Springfield Development Code. So
Just building stuff.
building and land use, yes. So not nuisance violations, those are transferred to Lane
Okay.
County.
Okay.
That's good to know. Then Lane County, that's confusion order because sometimes Lane County steps in. We don't know what's going on.
Well, and I think you should probably keep referring those folks to their county commissioner. And like it is definitely challenging in the UGB. Corey?
Thank you. I don't really have any questions. I just have a couple of comments. One, I really appreciate the pushing to plainer language. Because I know that can be a big barrier for folks to even understanding what they can and can't do. And I'm interested to see if as you're gathering data, which I know I was one of the people when you came before that was like, if we're going to do this, let's figure out how we know if it's working, and we're gathering data and we're figuring it out. I think the same thing with the language is that I'm hoping that this isn't we do this one time and then we look at it again in 20 years. I'm hoping that we'll have some tweaks and we'll have some things in it maybe that people are still like, I don't understand what this means. And we might have to make more adjustments as we go along, because as Councilor Pishneri said, it is a big shift. And so I don't anticipate that we will get it absolutely perfect the first time out of the box. And just encourage you to bring that back so that we can continue to have these conversations, so we can continue to improve.
All right. Other questions? All right. So I think you need direction, right? So I think we're good bringing back the new municipal code amendments as drafted and letting that go for public hearing. And I'm looking around to see if anybody's sort of throwing a chair at me. Go ahead.
Sorry. That Tyler system, I know that Springfield courts use it, is the code enforcement section using Tyler going to interface with the Springfield Municipal Courts, Tyler? So that information, there's an information share in that if you're referring cases to the court systems, then you'll be doing that via the Tyler software. So they have that information. Is that
Absolutely.
okay?
Yeah.
Perfect.
All right. So the other two ones are about the FT and the program software. And like Nancy, I'm sure you're sorting that out just from in your budget process for this year.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, I would want to first get the council, if you kind of head nod that you think this could be a direction that you would want to go, because you're right, this is a change in how code enforcement is handled. But then the devil is always in the details. So this will be part of our budget deliberation process as well.
All right. Question, Joe, and then we're cutting you off.
Put a cork in it. There it is. You did. So, with the Tyler program, talking with the municipal courts and Chief shared is the PD using Tyler at all? Is the PD using Tyler, the Tyler software? We don't. Tyler, Tyler, Tyler software. I thought they were. No. So I'm just thinking if they did, then all three departments can maybe interface and share that information. But if they're not, I guess it's just all moot. Thanks.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that, Councilor Pishneri. We can certainly check.
And then so bring back the municipal code for public hearing. And then we also, I think, want to see the policy adoption to make sure that we're very clear that we want to stay roughly a complaint-driven organization. Is there anything else you need direction on?
That's it, Mayor.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job.
All right. The next one, Aaron, come on down. Fiscal year 2025 draft community development block grant annual action plan.
Good evening, Mayor, Council. I'm here tonight with the draft fiscal year 2025 Community Development Block Grant CDBG Annual Action Plan. I will note Congress has not yet passed a budget. So we are using estimated figures, and we're using the same allocation that we received this year, about $555,000. So as part of the city's citizen participation plan for these funds, Council's advisory committee, the Community Development Advisory Committee, met on February 7th and held a public hearing on the needs and community needs that align with these grant strategies. The committee reviewed anticipated funding, past projects, and the status of ongoing programs, and has made a recommendation to council on the proposed allocation that we will be publishing for comment, and that is included in the last page of your packet of this item. The CDAC's recommendation includes supporting existing programs such as the city's home repair program, the down payment assistance program, the contribution to Lane County for social service funding, as well as funding set aside for administration and planning. Just to give a quick overview of those programs, the city's home repair program provides urgent home repair services as a grant to very low income homeowners here in Springfield. And by very low income, I mean a single person living alone needs to make no more than about $30,000 a year in order to qualify for the program. And this is helping folks patch a leaky roof, fix a heating issue, or address a plumbing issue, or provide an accessibility ramp. So that home repair program has been working well, and consistently council has supported that program. So it's in the draft plan.
Joe? Or,
So
go ahead.
Just a quick question, because you were talking about home repair program. I know of a few homes that have got branches sticking through their ceilings. And some of those homes are very low income folks. And I see potentially an uptick in monies required or needed for home repair, because that situation can be very, very hazardous, not only for the obvious hazardousness, but for the incursion of potential mold and mildew issues for those homes. So is there any consideration or plans for an outreach? Because folks just don't know about this program. And is there anything out there that we're looking at and letting these folks know that there's some money available, but is there money available enough to cover that increase of damage to our homes to that lovely storm?
those are the exact conversations we've been having among staff. I think it's mixed. We think there might be additional funds carried over from this year possible. I think Ellison, Ellison, in her work in the EOC has been receiving, we've been asking the public to submit repair needs through Lane County's public facing website. And then as I understand it, the EOC is taking those identifying those repairs and then seeing if someone does qualify for this program, then we would do outreach to them without advertising the program as is and not knowing what kind of influx is coming. And so recognizing that there is a system for folks to report on needed repairs from the ice storm, we're looking at that system to see, can we follow up and inform folks? But we have been issuing mailers and other sort of outreach about the program over time through different neighborhoods in the last year, I think, to get more, sort of to get the word out about the program.
Is the $30,000, is that a federal regulation, or is that something we decided?
What's that refer to?
Well, you said you had, for a single person to qualify to use this fund,
Oh.
that you had to be a single person earning roughly $30,000 a year or less.
That's a good question. We chose to the income limit that the program has been operating is the 50% area median income. And so that is the income max for 50%. It would be possible to amend the program to allow up to 80% area median income as eligible through the CDBG program. But right now the city is capped at 50%.
And roughly at 50%, are we draining this account annually?
Yeah, we've I think over time, we've seen, I think a couple years ago, I don't have the figures in front of me, but I think we were spending maybe $120,000 a year for this program, with maybe serving about 60 households a year. I think last year we spent 264,000 serving more people, but we also, the repairs are costing more now than they were. So that is our fear about allowing more more folks to be eligible.
Right,
Yeah.
right. Okay, thank you.
Okay, so that's the home repair program is one of the programs proposing to continue to fund. Down payment assistance is also been a program that council has supported, otherwise known as the SHOP program, Springfield Homeownership Program. That program provides 0% interest loans to low-income households to buy a home here in Springfield. We have revamped that program in recent years and increased the dollar amount up to $25,000 per household. And we have seen demand for this program in a way that we weren't seeing previously. I think we've had 6 loans in the last year. 3 of them were completed in December. And I will say those funds have nearly been used fully. So the program actually is on pause right now because we don't have enough funds to keep that program going right now. And just as an aside, I'll be back during regular session to address that question. So that is a possibility later. The other proposal to fund is the contribution from the city to Lane County. This is through their Human Services Division. This is to recognize Lane County as the social service agency lead for the region, and by pooling funds between Springfield, Eugene, and the county, the 3 jurisdictions over time have sort of addressed social service needs on a regional basis. And then finally, the allocation is proposing to put funds towards grant administration and planning to help pay for staff and other needs to continue the program. Given the demand for some of these programs and the sort of stagnation at the congressional level of CDBG funds over time, we are not proposing that there's enough funds here to maintain support for these programs and put out a request for proposals as we have in past years. So I just wanted to highlight that. But next steps for the process, we are proposing to publish the draft allocation for public comment for 30 days. The Community Development Advisory Committee will reconvene the beginning of April to review any comments received, hold a second public hearing on the draft plan, and make a final recommendation to council. And then you will see this again in May for your final approval, with hopefully actual numbers from HUD as far as what our allocation will be. I'll pause there, and then I did want to highlight just a few things. So if anyone has any questions about the proposal to be published for comment.
All right, any other questions? Okay, nope, okay, keep going.
Thanks. The few things I want to highlight, there are a few outstanding projects that were funded in prior years that have been delayed for various reasons. Most notably, Catholic Community Services has proposed to build an addition to their existing service center to create a day center for homeless families with children as part of their OASIS program. There is a letter from Lori, the executive director, in your packet. As stated, this is still a priority project for CCS. It has hit some delays, particularly while the city is undertaking its HUD-required environmental review. There have been some issues of soil contamination that we've had to continue to. There was a leaking underground storage tank that was removed 25 years ago, but was never fully cleaned up. And so per HUD's process, we are continuing to identify what the issue is and then ultimately how to mitigate it. So it has caused delays in the process. Meanwhile, construction costs are increasing and are now projected to be at a higher cost than what was originally funded for the project. So CCS is in the process of evaluating additional funding options and looking at different ways to potentially decrease project costs to align with the funding awarded. I just wanted to highlight that with anticipation that something hopefully will be coming back to you with a proposed solution for figuring out, is there a way to move the project forward? And if something needs to change, let's talk through it. So hopefully I can have something for you from them in the next few months to move forward. But I just wanted to give a heads up. And then the last thing I'll highlight is that some of these delays are now causing a timeliness issue in making sure that we get the money out the door in a timely fashion per HUD requirements. So we kind of have two proposals. One proposal that staff will be looking at is this ability to use CDBG funds to pay off an existing loan we have on behalf of NEDCO, Dev Northwest, for a building they bought with CDBG funds in 2009. They are repaying that loan over time, and we are taking their loan repayments and paying off the loan we took out on behalf of them. So there's a proposal that we could use CDBG funds that we have on hand now that we need to spend to immediately pay off that loan, and then use their ongoing loan repayments to sort of pay back that CDBG fund. So it's not going to change what ultimately is available for projects. It just changes when those funds are available. So I just wanted to highlight it now. My aim would be to go through the public process and put this proposal out there through a public hearing. It goes to the advisory committee, and then they ultimately make a recommendation to you all on potential next steps. So I just want to get ahead of it if it's something that maybe we could look into doing later this spring or this summer. And then the last thing is stay tuned for regular session, where there is a proposed substantial amendment to move other funds that are not moving into the SHOP program, seeing that there's a demand for those funds and the lack of funds right now. So that's where we're at. Questions, thoughts, feelings?
No, I'm seeing Corey.
I like that. I'm seeing none but Corey. Thank you very much for this. And I know I said this earlier in the year, which is probably last year. I am so excited to see that people are using those funds to purchase houses in Springfield, because I know that was in a lull for some time. And I'm very excited about that. And I know there's some work that's happening in the legislature to also help to support people in buying homes. And I just am glad that that is actually moving and being used. And I also appreciate Councilor Pishnari bringing up just the concerns about people's the damages that may have happened during the storm. I think just across the board, many people were affected by the storm in the immediacy, but there's going to be so many things that we're looking at. There are people who spent their rent and mortgage money to stay in hotels, and people who lost so much. And so I think this is going to be a continual conversation for us to be thinking about as we look at these established programs. Are there ways that we can tweak or adjust those to better meet the needs of people post-storm? So thank you.
All right. So I think we're good, and this looks good. So we will chat with you during the regular session.
I can't wait. Thank you.
We can't wait either. Thanks, Aaron. I'm going to adjourn the work session, and we will reconvene at 7 o'clock for the regular session. I'm going to call the regular session of the Springfield City Council to order with roll call.
Mayor Van Gordon,
Here.
Counselor Weber,
Here.
Counselor Mo,
Here.
Counselor Rodley,
Here.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Here.
and Counselor Pishnari.
Here, thank you.
Counselor Blackwell is excused for the evening. Please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance. As we begin our meeting tonight, there are two designated times for public testimony this evening under public hearings and business from the audience. If you are attending in person, please complete the request to speak card located at the entrance of the council chambers and give to the city recorder. If you're joining us online with tablet, smartphone, computer, or wish to speak with either of those times, please use the raised hand feature in Zoom. The order of public testimony is as follows: anyone in person in the council chambers, and then anyone who has raised their virtual hand. First item, please.
First item is Springfield Upbeat. Item number one is the mayor's recognition, Women in Construction Proclamation. And Mayor, this is your item.
I've got to get organized up here. All right. This is the Women in Construction Week proclamation. Whereas the National Association of Women in Construction, or NAWIC, was founded by 16 women working in the construction industry in 1953 and was established in 1955 in Fort Worth, Texas. And whereas the work done by NAWIC Chapter 77 has benefited the state through community development and education programs. And whereas the Eugene Springfield chapter has unceasingly promoted the employment and advancement of women in construction. And whereas the NAWIC Chapter 77 has sought to achieve success results for Lane County in a cooperative spirit with other organizations, I, Sean Van Gordon, the mayor of Springfield, do hereby recognize NAWIC Chapter 77 and its many dedicated volunteers who work on behalf and support women in construction, and proclaim March 3rd through 9th, 2024 as Women in Construction Week. And I think we have somebody from NAWIC. We're going to come back and take a picture down here. It's an aging page.
It's an aging.
All right, next item, please.
The next item is the consent calendar.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent calendar.
Second,
All right, Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is public hearings. Public hearing number one is annexation of territory to the city of Springfield. Annex 0.19 acres of residential property located at 1717 Kellogg Road, map 17-03-33-11, tax lot 00301, and concurrently annex a segment of Kellogg Road. This is ordinance number one, an ordinance annexing certain territory, again, 1717 Kellogg Road, and approximately a 260-foot length segment of Kellogg Road to the city of Springfield, withdrawing the same territory from the Rainbow Water District, and adopting a severability clause and providing an effective date. This is a first reading, and Tom Severs is here for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and City Councilors. I am Tom Severs, Senior Planner with the current planning section. Tonight, the council is requested to consider an ordinance to annex an approximately 0.19 acre property addressed as 1717 Kellogg Road in western Springfield, along with a segment of public right-of-way. The proposed annexation area is highlighted in yellow, and the subject site is located at the corner of Rayner Avenue and Kellogg Road. The applicant is the property owner and had requested emergency annexation to remediate a failing septic system for which they have subsequently connected. Staff is also requesting to include an unannexed segment of Kellogg Road. Annexation of this street segment will not constitute a jurisdictional transfer and will remain the responsibility of the county. The site is zoned R1, low-density residential, with the urbanizable fringe UF10 overlay. As you can see, it is contiguous to the city limits immediately to the north. Sorry. There we go. Immediately to the north, no other zoning changes are requested except for the removal of the UF10 overlay. With annexation, the subject property will be removed from special districts such as the UF10 overlay depicted here and service areas such as the Rainbow Water and Fire District. No other zoning changes will occur with this application. There are 4 approval criteria for annexations in the Springfield Development Code, which were addressed in full in the staff report and summarized as follows. Criterion A, within UGB and contiguous to the city limits. As previously stated, the subject property is contiguous to the city limits along its northern boundary. The subject territory is within the city's urban growth boundary and is currently covered by the urbanizable fringe overlay. Criterion B, consistent with policies of the Metro Plan. Specifically, policies 27, 29, 33, 34, and 35 of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan's urbanization element are met through this application, as the annexed land will be fully within the Springfield urban service area. Criterion C, within boundary for minimum level of key urban services. Policies 29, 31, and 32 of the 2030 Comprehensive Plan's urbanization element are met through this application as well. As previously stated, the subject territory made an emergency connection to the sanitary sewer due to a failing septic system. Staff finds that the property can easily obtain key urban facilities and services from the Kellogg Road right-of-way. Again, these facilities and services will include sanitary sewer connection, sub-water and electric service, fire protection services from the Eugene Springfield Fire Department, police services from the Springfield Police, and the Willamette Lane Recreation District. Criterion D, annexation agreement. A fully executed and recorded annexation agreement has already been completed by the city and the applicant due to the emergency connection. The agreement covers obligations for the applicants and for the city, including any financial responsibilities. The agreement includes details on future connection to key urban facilities and services and withdrawal from special service districts. Because all applicable annexation criteria have been met and the applicant facilitated emergency connection to the sewer system, city staff recommends that this application be considered for approval by council. Thank you, councilors and mayor, and I'm here for any questions.
Victoria.
Hi, thank you. So Kellogg Road that we're looking at annexing into the city, is that an unimproved portion of road?
It is improved to a certain extent. I don't believe it has full urban facilities, being curb, gutter, sidewalk,
So it's
stuff like
paved.
that, but it is paved, correct?
So what's the reasoning behind the city taking on that?
As I understand it, it's common practice to annex rights of way along with subject territories that are being annexed if there is a portion of roadway that still remains. In this case, it's a very small segment of Kellogg. It is to also be annexed to help facilitate any future annexations.
Okay, so we own on either side and this is just a
Correct.
chunk in the middle?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank
If
you.
I may, just chime in, Mark Rust with the City of Springfield Planning. So in this specific case, and Tom's correct, we normally do annex adjacent right-of-ways. This one is unique in that we are facilitating a jurisdictional transfer of this segment from the county. They're providing a fiscal transfer for us to take that as well. So our city engineer and city engineering department have been working with the county to do that. You will see in the future, within the next couple of months, a couple other segments of roadways that have also been negotiated with the county for us to take jurisdictional transfer. So this longer segment, which is longer than what we would typically annex as adjacent to a property, we kind of added on to this annexation just because the timing worked out. So this one will become a city road and the county has provided money for us to take that from them.
Okay, but not money to improve it.
Well, it's up for the city to decide how the money they give us is then spent as part of the street fund.
Okay, I'm just concerned because we have so many roads right now that we can't take care of that are in dire need of of repairs, and then for us to take on an unimproved road that we're now responsible for, again, doing the improvements on and updating. So
Yeah,
that's my only
and
thing.
Jeff is here if there were more questions. My understanding is this negotiation was a number of years ago that the agreement was made to transfer these sections. I think due to some staff turnover at the county, the actual transfer has lagged behind and now it's finally happening.
Any other questions? All right, I'm gonna go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't have any cards for this item. Neil, is there anybody raising their hand online?
No hands for this item.
Okay, I'm gonna go ahead and close the public hearing. This was first reading only and no action tonight. Thank you. Next item, please.
Thank you all.
Next item is public hearing number 2, annexation of territory to the city of Springfield. Annex approximately 36.1 acres of residential property located at 5400 Mount Vernon Road, map 18-02-04-00, tax lot 3500 and a portion of tax lot 3600 and 3800, and concurrently annex a segment of Mount Vernon Road public right of way. Again, this is ordinance number 2, an ordinance annexing certain territories, vacant property formerly addressed as 5400 Mount Vernon Road and identified as assessor's map 18-02-04-00, tax lot 3500 and portions of tax lot 3600 and 3800, an approximately 30-foot wide by 196-foot long segment of Mount Vernon Road right-of-way to the city of Springfield and Willamette Park and Recreation District, withdrawing the same territory from the Willackenzie Rural Fire Protection District, adopting a severability clause, and providing an effective date. This is a first reading, and Andy Limbert is here for this item.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good to see you back. Thank you. And counselors, I'm just going to flip to the next PowerPoint, a different property. Bear with me. They don't let me take the controls. Okay, so this is property that's in Southeast Springfield. It adjoins the developing Woodland Ridge neighborhood. It's about approximately 36 acres of vacant property that's proposed for annexation, and it's outlined in yellow. This represents phases 5 through 8 of the Woodland Ridge neighborhood. A portion has been platted and it joins to the west city limits. There are currently lots that have been platted in the phases 3 and 4. 4 is being platted right now. It's actively under construction. And so this represents a residential development area for the city with about 200 dwelling units planned for this property. The annexation area includes a very small segment of Mount Vernon Road. It doesn't adjoin much of Mount Vernon Road. There's an intervening triangular piece of property owned by Lane County, which is right at the intersection that is not being annexed. So the annexation of right-of-way goes to the center line of Mount Vernon Road. Incrementally, as properties annex to the city, the adjoining right-of-way, similar to a property that's immediately to the east, which was annexed in the last 2 years, also had the Mount Vernon Road frontage annexed to Centerline. So incrementally, Mount Vernon Road will also be annexed, not jurisdictionally transferred at this time. There is an interesting complication to this property in that there is an intervening approximately 20-foot wide private property that extends from Mount Vernon Road all the way through to the north end property north of Holly Street on north, I guess it's South 54th Street. That intervening property represents a challenge to connection of utilities and public streets to this property. It is necessary both for traffic, emergency access, and extension of water service to this area that crossover of this property be attained by the developer. As such, there is provision in the annexation agreement that the developer needs to come to terms with that property owner for the extension of public streets and utilities. It is also anticipated that this property will somehow be incorporated into the development area sometime in the future so that there isn't a gap between the Pinehurst neighborhood and the developing Woodland Ridge neighborhood. It is not planned as a use as an alley. Long-term, it would not be conducive to having a vacant corridor between residential homes. It would be problematic. Another interesting situation that this property faces is that it's between two service districts for subwater. It's between the level 1 and level 2 service districts just due to its elevation. And so there are level 2 service connections on the east side that have been stubbed out at Holly Street and Pinehurst Street. They need to connect through to this property in order to facilitate future development. That also is covered in the annexation agreement that's included with your packet. Finally, traffic that's being generated by this residential development area is anticipated to impact the Daisy Street and Bob Straub Parkway intersection. That has been identified by Lane County. Lane County operates Bob Straub Parkway as their facility. That has been identified as a necessary intersection improvement. There is provision in the annexation agreement for a proportional contribution from this development area to the intersection improvements anticipated for Bob Straub at Daisy Street. And there is a formula that was used in the calculation of that proportional share based on the amount of traffic generated from phases 5 through 8 relative to other traffic that would be using the Daisy Street and Bob Straub Parkway connection. Again, that is addressed in the annexation agreement. So there are certain elements that are not standard sort of boilerplate. They're specific to this development area and their obligations of the developer to mitigate against fiscal impacts that the city would otherwise be experiencing. So I wanted to bring those to council's attention in this annexation agreement included in your packet. Aside from that, I'd be happy to answer any questions. It is contiguous with the city limits along the northern and northeastern boundary. As I mentioned, there is a small gap area along the eastern boundary where there's an intervening private property. That area will need to be addressed through the developers, I guess, negotiations or communications with this adjacent property owner in order to facilitate further residential development on this property. So I'll be happy to answer any questions if you have them.
Thanks, Sandy. Victoria.
So the other concern, and maybe I'm wrong, but when I look at this, it looks like when you're looking at the west end where Holly Street is that going to dump out into that neighborhood that pops out onto Daisy where they could end up funneling to Daisy and 42nd, where we have a terrible problem with traffic in that intersection. I know they had considered even a roundabout at that point, at some point, but that's not necessarily feasible. So that's a little concern I had there with that 51st Street going out to Main Street. That's all residential. And then Holly and taking people down to Daisy and then heading west and going to 42nd. So is that something that's been considered as well?
Well, the interconnectivity of the street network has been considered. So it presents, I guess, a number of options for people to go and also for emergency access to be attained for this area. Unfortunately, because of the intervening railroad tracks, there isn't an option to connect to Jasper Road. And the areas that could be connected at Mount Vernon Road are essentially, I believe it's South 55th Street is the only intersection. So traffic is routed, as you point out, Holly Street westward through the Westwind subdivision. It's a little bit more circuitous and somewhat slower because you're going through a neighborhood. The intent would be to deliver most of the traffic from this neighborhood to either Mount Vernon Road eventually or to Daisy Street to go either east or west to Bob Straub Parkway. There's also eventually going to be 48th Street and Daisy Street is a planned connection. It has not been constructed yet. And then 42nd Street at Daisy Street as well. So there is a planned or at least contemplated roundabout intersection at 48th that would allow traffic to go right to Main Street. But there's an intervening property that hasn't developed yet. So that's part of the long-term plan to take pressure off of any one connection point and any one residential street. So there would be multiple options depending upon where the traffic is destined.
Okay, so there's plans to do something with Mount Vernon Road then to bring that up to city specs.
Eventually, it will be to city standards all the way from basically Bob Straub through to Jasper Road.
Okay.
But it's going to take some time because not all the portions have been annexed yet. As we know, it connects to Linda Lane, which is
Right.
property that we've also been discussing. So there are some incomplete pieces, but incrementally it's being annexed and hopefully funding eventually be found for completing that section. It is important because of the railroad tracks.
I was gonna say, that's gonna be the
And
fun
there's a
part.
key intersection at Jasper Road where the property owner we've been in discussion with has, if you ever see their fence, that people have gone right through it, not stopping at that Jasper Road. So there are a number of complicating transportation issues, and city and the developers, traffic engineer to their credit, are trying to, and the county are all trying to deal with through this neighborhood development.
I appreciate that. That's actually my backyard, so I'm just trying to keep an eye on it. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Any other questions? No. If you want to make a comment, we'll do it. I'm going to open a public hearing here in a second, and then I can take some comment from it. All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. I have no cards. Neil, do you have anybody on?
No hands online.
Okay, so do you still want to make a comment, Jason? Okay, then come on up. And when you're done, you're going to have to fill out a separate card for these folks. So come on up.
I've got a card up here.
Yeah, well, you got to do it twice. So it's two topics. So state your name and place in the city for the record, and then you have 3 minutes.
On this annex, Jason Prophet, Quarry Road, Willamette Heights. This annex he's talking about, what fire department's going to service that? I know of 2 fire departments out there. Are those fire departments staffed enough to take care of that? That's my question for that.
All right. Do you have any other comments for it? And then we'll let Andy to answer it. All right. Thanks, Jason. Fill out a card for them, please. All right. I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing. And Andy, you want to come back up?
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor and Councilors. The area that is proposed for annexation is currently within the Willackenzie Rural Fire Protection District. And upon annexation, it'll be withdrawn from the Willackenzie Rural Fire Protection District, and it'll be part of the Eugene Springfield protection area.
Okay.
Practically speaking, it's already within the Eugene Springfield response area, but there are no houses or structures. It would be if there were a grass fire or a timber, blaze, it would be responded to by Eugene Springfield, be under contract with Willackenzie, but it'd be formally added to Eugene Springfield District. So,
all right, great. Thank you. And then this is first reading only, so no actions required. Next item, please.
Next item is fiscal year 24 supplemental budget number 3. As resolution number 1, a resolution adjusting resources and requirements in the following funds: general, street, special revenue, community development, fire local option levy, police local option levy, development assessment, capital, development projects, regional wastewater capital, ambulance, storm drainage operations, and vehicle and equipment. Jessica Mummy is here for this item.
Good evening, Mayor and City Council. My name is Jessica Mummy. I'm the City of Springfield's new Budget and Procurement Manager. It's great to be here with you this evening. The item before you this evening is a request to conduct a public hearing and to adopt or not adopt Resolution 1, adjusting resources and requirements in specific funds. This is the third of 4 planned supplemental budgets for fiscal year 24. In the council briefing memo, supplemental budget items were highlighted that may be of high interest to council, affect FTE accounts or our new expenditure appropriations. The largest fiscal impact in supplemental budget 3 is related to the 2024 ice storm, specifically funding for the Emergency Operations Center and overall recovery efforts. The city plans to apply for reimbursement from FEMA to the full extent possible. With that, I'll turn it over to you for any questions and to conduct the public hearing.
Any questions? All right, I'm going to go ahead and open the public hearing. I don't have any cards for this item. Neil, do you have anybody online?
No hands for this item.
I'm going to go ahead and close the public hearing.
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 1.
Second,
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. The motion passes. Next item, please.
Next item is business from the audience.
We are. No, we're gonna get to 2 and 3 here in a minute. So we're doing business from the audience first. All right, so business from the audience. First card I have is Jason Profit. State your name and location in the city, and then you have 3 minutes.
Jason Prophet, 657 Quarry, Willamette Heights area. I really come tonight to say thanks for the city to bring the firewood in. Thanks to the mayor for walking in on a Sunday when he wasn't feeling good and seeing the damage. And I want to say thanks to the police department for walking in at midnight on 3 inches of ice to do a welfare check. That was great. Yeah. Now, as Victoria mentioned, we have more roads than can be taken care of. Quarry Road had got rutted up with the power trucks coming in. It needs graded and gravelled badly. The gravel I put on there is gone. Willamette Heights still has tree branches stacked in the curbs. Oh, don't forget about us. We still have probably a 1/4 mile of communication line that's laying in the bushes. That'll need to be picked up sometime. And I think that's all I got.
All right, thanks, Jason.
Thank you.
The next person's Phil Farrington.
Evening, Mayor, Councilors. Phil Farrington. I work for CDC Management Corp. in Eugene, owners of property just across the street here. Appeared before you but previously speaking in support of your efforts and staff's efforts to develop the housing diversity tax exemption. I understand that the council has been considering omitting commercial development and parking from HDTE eligibility, but I'd encourage you to reconsider this approach, at least in areas that are zoned for mixed-use commercial development. Since MUC zoning requires commercial development, it'd be logical to support new mixed-use development projects by allowing the HDTE to apply to all improvements, including the required commercial development. And while the city no longer has a minimum parking requirement, the provision of parking may be necessary in some quantity for new development to be financially viable and to advance lease up of commercial and residential uses in a mixed-use project. Allowing the HDTE to be applied to the entirety of improvement value for new mixed-use development would simplify administration of the tax exemption and give the greatest possible chance of success for applicable new development, particularly for infill downtown areas and those zoned mixed-use commercial. I'd urge you to please keep this in mind as you continue your efforts to develop this program, and that encourages the very kinds of urban development that you seek and the community so desperately wants. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Phil. The next card I have is Kevin Campbell.
Thank you. I'm Kevin Campbell. I'm here representing the Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee. I was authorized to present these remarks to you. Going to give you a brief summary of our 2023 report, and I'll just go ahead and read our prepared remarks. The Springfield Bicycle Pedestrian Advisory Committee had a productive year in 2023. This report provides a summary of the accomplishments the committee made this year, including 2 safe street audits and community outreach, and providing guidance to staff regarding bicycle parking enhancements and bike share expansion. Regarding safe street audits, the first audit targeted the area near Hamlin Middle School, with the second occurring along South A and Main Streets between Mill and 10th Street. A small summary will be provided along with the report. In terms of community outreach and education, a new webpage was launched, Walk Bike Springfield. This site consolidates all information and resources related to pedestrian and bicycle projects and activities in Springfield. A new QR code linking the Walk Bike Springfield site is already in use and will become more prevalent on signage and other resources distributed through the community. This will educate citizens about new and upcoming future projects, links to bicycle and pedestrian response tools to request repairs or other needed repairs, and will also include information on path etiquette. We were involved in several pop-up events, including path etiquette. We featured trivia, prizes, free bicycle repairs, maps, resources, handouts. Path etiquette is a ever-growing concern with the accelerated usage of e-mobility devices such as e-scooters and e-bicycles, and we want to maintain awareness of these upcoming issues. The city of Springfield was also awarded $86,500 in regional bicycle enhancement grant funding to strengthen bicycle infrastructure. The funding supports the purchase and installation of public bicycle racks in locations lacking quality bicycle parking. The BPAC recommended considering equity, popularity, and security when installing these new features for Springfield. Outreach and community engagement was led by Kelsey Moore, Springfield's transportation options specialist, and a majority of locations have been vetted with finalization to occur in 2024. Please review the rest of the report. Thank you for your time.
Yeah, Kevin, could you email us the copy of the report?
Absolutely.
All right, thank you. All right, last card I have Jeff and Scott. And are you guys testifying together or separately? I heard separate and together at the same time. So why don't we do this, right? There's two of you. I think you guys coordinated your comments? Why don't we team up for 6 minutes? But before you guys start, both read your name and location for the record, and then you guys can work through this.
Knew that, dang it. I'm Scott Lindstrom. I'm president and COO of Jerry's Home Improvement Center, and our store is located at 2525 Olympic Street.
And I'm Jeff Choate, the loss prevention manager for Jerry's Home Improvement.
I should have said good evening, Mayor and councilors. Sorry. Well, I'm here tonight. I was going to read my notes, but I don't want to read them. So I'm here representing our employee owners. On behalf of employee owners, I'm here to express our appreciation for the council's support of the Springfield Police Department. And specifically, our issue has been the tremendous loss that our store in Springfield is receiving due to retail theft. The number is in the hundreds of thousands of dollars just this last year. And it's way up over last year, even though we had lots of efforts to try to curtail that. So we've had a couple of sting operations that the Springfield Police Department has done, and we are encouraging to do more if they can. And with your support, I'm hoping we can do so. My issue with I got to go fast. Is as employee owners that is their retirement, and this money comes right out of their pockets. And when they get ready to retire, that money needs to be there. So we need to figure out a way to reduce the amount of loss that we're getting. It's just being between near Walmart, of course, and Winco or Wilco is a problem. And there's steady streams of traffic, people on skateboards running in the store, running out. It's just been a real problem. I'm going to let Jeff talk right now about what the issues.
A couple of issues we face. I think it's common perception that Well, don't companies like Jerry's have insurance that covers losses? The deductibles are through the roof. We're talking well over, we're into the five figures. And so that would be a tremendous loss, and to lower the deductible would be an even greater cost. So insurance doesn't help us. And when it comes to retail prices, I think there's also a perception that, well, Jerry's just raises the price to cover those losses. We can't, because our competitors don't. So they have more buying power than we do. They can absorb more of this, and they do. Their theft is even higher than ours in many cases. So as Scott said, this comes directly out of our employee owners' pockets. And as an ESOP, an employee stock ownership plan, we have our retirement funds are through Jerry's, and so it comes right out of the bottom line from our team members. As Scott mentioned, we did a couple of sting operations with Springfield Police, so I'd like to thank them for their help in supporting us, and the council for giving them the freedom to do those opportunities, or those sting operations. We know that, well, first of all, we'd like to do more of those, but those come at a cost. I know there is funding through the state that's going to be made available this year for grant funding to help fund law enforcement activities such as that throughout the state. So we are prepared to provide any support we can, whether it be helping with authoring the grant. I know that needs to come from a municipality, so it'll be submitted by Springfield Police or City of Springfield, but providing testimony, we'll help out in any way we can.
Nope, I think that's it. Thank you. I think we're done for tonight.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you, guys. Neil, are there any online hands?
I'm not seeing any hands for this item.
Okay, is there any council response? I saw Corey first.
Thank you. I want to thank everyone for coming and providing testimony tonight. I think we covered a lot of very important issues, which I really, really appreciate. I just, when I saw Kevin, I used to be the council representative to the BPAC, and now it's Councilor Weber, and I was like, the BPAC folks are here. We have so many wonderful committees of volunteers, and the bicycle and pedestrian folks are so passionate and do such a great amount of work to try to improve the livability of Springfield, and I appreciate that. And I really also appreciate Scott and Jeff coming and talking about the challenges with Jerry's. I was not aware of that. We purchased our house in Ward 3 very close to Jerry's, and as we've been renovating it, it's been at Jerry's, one paycheck at a time. So I really appreciate you bringing that to our attention here, so that maybe we can see what is even possible. And also, I just think it's terrible that that's what's happening over there. And I know that you're not alone. The Walmart over there and the Winco as well, or the Wilco, are having those issues. And it's one of the things I love about that neighborhood. So to have those stores right there is so handy in such a what I think of as like a working class neighborhood. And I would hate to see us lose those because of those behaviors. So thank you all for coming and sharing your concerns with us tonight.
Joe.
Well, not much left to say. No, thank you from Jerry's. Really appreciate you folks coming in here. We don't hear that very often from businesses that are helped by our different departments, or whether it's streets or the PD or fire department. It's really good to hear that support. And I fully support that program in regards to the sting operations, a little more than 100%, but probably right around 1,000%. And so if there is any way in which you folks can help the city, vice versa, in regards to getting some grant funding so we can get some more officers in there, I would love to send a very, very clear message to those people that are coming in and taking things that don't belong to them. And we could work very closely with our Justice Department, where anybody knows what the ADP of our jail is, average daily population is? It's usually right around 48 to 58 out of a 100-bed facility. So we have room for those kind of non-shoppers. So I'd love to see that rolling. So I'm very, very highly encourage that. Thank you.
Victoria.
Yeah, I'd just like to piggyback on that too, because I think sometimes we feel helpless because the police do what they can and then the people get right back out the next day. So I wish there was a way that we could influence the court systems to actually start taking action, because it doesn't do a lot of good for us to do all that work. And then 2 days later, they're back out on the streets doing the same thing. So we need to send a clear message. And I'm not sure what the answer to that is, but I would love to be a part of the solution. So.
All right, and I'm hoping you guys, maybe you guys can connect with Chief Shear or somebody in his office can connect, especially if there's support for, grant programs. I know that they're always interested in that. And, for the PD, it's always great to hear this kind of feedback from folks, right? Jerry's is a great company. We're glad you're in this community. I feel like I do my home projects one check at a time and at least 3 trips on the same day. But if you could do two things for us, is just one, stay connected to the PD about your needs. And the other piece would be if you could just summarize the comments that you made and the importance of, their work, the work the PD is doing for your employees and your bottom line. I'm sure Chief Shear would love to have that in an email that he can share with folks about the work that they're doing. And then the other note that I had is, with the ice storm, can somebody maybe help follow up about Mr. Profit's issue with Quarry Street? If the utilities. Oh, well, you stole my thunder. You're already on it. Perfect. All right. Anybody else? I think Nancy.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to let you know that I will talk to Chief Shear about helping out with respect to shoplifting and theft. And I think every member of this community can be a part of supporting our local business owners. My father was a business owner, and so I have a special place in my heart in shopping local. So we do all of our shopping at Jerry's, and I would encourage other people to do likewise. Thank you.
Next item, please.
Next item is business from the city manager. Item number 1 is extension of the winter ice storm emergency declaration. This is resolution number 2, a resolution extending the city of Springfield order declaring a state of emergency issued on January 16th, 2024 to April 1st, 2024. And this is my item.
It's like you were over there.
Probably
Now you're over here.
right over there, but we want to be official. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Again, Neil Ladati, your Assistant City Manager. Here tonight to request an extension of the winter ice storm emergency declaration. While the declaration allows the city to request reimbursements from Lane County and the state, what it also allows us to do is maintain flexibility and out-of-the-box thinking to help our neighbors and community members through the ice storm and through the response. A couple of examples that we've been able to do with the emergency declaration, for example, allowing us to quickly get through the complicated contract work for the no-cost dumping sites over the last 3 weekends, the waiving of the tree felling permits, and then still the planning and EOC case-by-case basis with neighbors, helping them through whatever issues come to the front counter. It just allows us the flexibility to work more quickly. So we're asking again for emergency declaration to be extended approximately 6 weeks. The initial declaration was on January 16th. Council ratified it on the 22nd, and it's set to expire on the 27th. Again, we're asking for an extension to April 1st. And I also want to recognize Mary Bridget Smith, who assisted with this item.
Are there any questions? All right. Only question I have is, I know we're waiting on a FEMA declaration that goes into April. Is April 1st far enough?
Well, I think what this allows us to do is revisit around that date. And if we need to extend, we can.
Okay, perfect. Thank you.
So I would like to actually make a comment too, that El Rapa had responded to the request from the city to allow for backyard burning during this time frame, which is typically prohibited. And they also modified another one, I think it's Title 26, where they modified the materials that can be burnt to allow green and wet woods as opposed to those being prohibited. So they're trying to do what they can, and I really appreciated their level of cooperation. And it was a unanimous vote by their entire board to allow that. So that's really cool. And you did a great job during that too. So I'd like to make a motion. I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution 2, a resolution extending the city of Springfield order declaring state of emergency issued on January 16th, 2024 to April 1st, 2024.
Second.
Could you call the vote, Neil?
Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle,
Aye.
and Counselor Pictionary.
Yes.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
The next item is removing discriminatory covenants from real property. This is resolution number 3, a resolution directing the city attorney to petition Lane County Circuit Court for the removal of discriminatory restrictions, ORS 93.270, for any and all city-owned real property that contains such restrictions. Jeff Pascal is here for this item.
Thank you, Mayor, councilors. Jeff Pascal, City, your Community Development Director. Here tonight with a pretty important topic. And I wouldn't be here except for the due diligence of our staff, particularly Aaron Fifield and our Assistant City Attorney, and putting the work together to bring this packet to you. They really did all of the work to what you see and what you've read tonight. But what occurred and what we found is when they were doing their due diligence and reviewing a property as they were looking for properties for development for affordable housing, they found a parcel that the city does own with these racially discriminatory covenants. And while these covenants, as you'll look and as you read in the packet, aren't legally enforceable, I think it's really important that we get these removed as an example for other community members. And likewise, what they've done is they've put on the website how for other citizens, any other property owners, how if they discover these covenants on their deeds, how the process to go through, which is a free process to go through and petition the court. And so with that, I'd open it up for discussion or any comments that the council may have.
Actually, we're going to go to Nancy first, and then we'll open up for council.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to recognize our community development team, Jeff, you included, and Aaron, and also our city attorney's office with Christina Kraz. You know, I think that the best work is done by the people and the staff people that are actually on the ground doing the work every day. And just in the course of their work, finding ways that we can do things better, finding ways that we can meet the council's goals. This one being promoting diversity and inclusion in the city. And so they actually brought this to our office, and I, thought it was such a good idea and talked to you, Mr. Mayor, about placing this on the agenda. Ordinarily, this would be just a housekeeping issue that we could have done internally, but we wanted to bring this before you tonight so that our community knows that they have the ability to do this as well. We have instructions, as Jeff mentioned, on the webpage, and it's free of charge to anybody who would want to do this. I would say, if you have an older home, might be worth looking into, probably, pre-1960s. But, I think it's a great example that comes from our staff. And I think I want to congratulate Jeff's leadership in making that happen.
All right, thank you. Any other Victoria?
So I want to say thank you as well. I actually, in my regular job, work with deeds and records, and it was only maybe 2 weeks ago when I came across one of the things that you're exactly talking about. And I knew that stuff was there, but when you actually see it in black and white, it is, it just gets you to your core. And so I am very pleased with our city for taking action on this and for being willing to take a stand. I hope that the city across the river, if they haven't, that they will consider doing that as well, because it needs to happen.
All right, thank you. Anybody else? All right, Joe?
I'd like to make a motion to adopt resolution number 3, a resolution directing the city attorney to petition Lane County Circuit Court for the removal of discriminatory restrictions, ORS 93.270, for any and all city-owned real property that contains such restrictions.
Second.
Neil, could you call a vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber.
Yes.
Counselor Mo.
Yes.
Counselor Rodley.
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell. Counselor Doyle.
Aye.
And Counselor Pictionary.
Yes.
Motion passes, 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Next item is the Community Development Block Grant Substantial Financial Year 2023 Amendment. This item needs a motion, and Aaron Fifield is here for this item.
As promised, you're back.
Hello again. Tonight, I'm looking for your approval of a substantial amendment of a prior year Community Development Block Grant CDBG action plan that would reallocate about $117,000 towards the city's down payment assistance program. As mentioned previously, the SHOP program provides homeownership assistance to low-income households to purchase a home here in Springfield. Since the city revamped the program in 2022, we have seen a greater demand given market conditions and for use of these funds. In the past year, the city has completed 6 loans for homeownership, 3 of which were just completed in December of 2023. As such, the city has spent nearly all of its allocated funding for this program, requiring us to pause the program before additional funds can be made available. At the same time, when staff are looking at other CDBG projects that may not be moving forward as quickly, we identified $117,548 that have been allocated toward a strategy to essentially help us acquire land for affordable housing. That strategy, those funds were allocated toward that strategy before the city received $1.5 million in ARPA funds that have also been allocated for that purpose and are actually more flexible to use. So as we've been undertaking the most recent land acquisition process, we've been relying on ARPA funds, and we're actually successful in closing on a property just a couple weeks ago, 16th and Main Street, that we now own. As such, we are proposing here tonight to reallocate that initial CDBG allocation toward the SHOP program and continue to use ARPA to buy land as the initial intent. This proposal went through the CDBG public participation process of the city. It was published for 30 days. For comment, the Community Development Advisory Committee met in February to discuss the proposal and is recommending that council approve the amendment.
Joe.
I just want a point of clarification. On the resolution as written says 107,548, and on the documentation within the packet, it indicates 117,548. So I wanted to confirm that it is 117,548 because that's what you actually said.
Yes, correct. It is 117,000. I did make that correction in the CDAC. I thought I tried to correct it, but yes, it is the larger number, the 117,000. We could correct it that way.
I'll make sure that when I do the motion.
Corey.
Thank you. 2 things. One, yay on Main Street. I'm very excited about that. I think you mentioned that to me a week or 2 ago, and I was really excited to hear that came together so fast. And I know it probably goes without saying, but I just want to continue to say that I'm completely supportive of this. And the more we can help folks purchase homes in Springfield and become homeowners, I just think that's really exciting. So I will fully support this.
Sure.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the substantial amendment to the Community Development Block Grant fiscal year 2023 annual action plan to reallocate $117,548 toward the Springfield Home Ownership Program.
Second.
Neil, could you call the vote, please?
Yes, Counselor Weber,
Yes.
Counselor Mo,
Yes.
Counselor Rodley,
Yes.
Counselor Blackwell, Counselor Doyle.
Aye.
And Counselor Pictionary.
Yes, thank you.
Motion passes 5 yeses, 0 nos, 1 absent. Next item, please.
Any other business from the city manager?
No further business, thank you.
Any business from the city attorney?
Just one quick additional item on the racially discriminatory covenants. We've already, on occasion, we have people call our office wanting to know about different legal things, and we've already been able to direct people to that webpage with the city. So people are interested in this, and so it's good to hear. Anyway, something that's important to the public.
Great, thank you. All right, we are adjourned. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Nathan.